I. Find out what you need to know to get into the UFC when we come back.
That is a which is fun, but you got to be ready for that. But it's
And welcome back to another episode of Fist First. As always, I am your host, Steve, along with my man, Slav. Slav, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Steve?
Not too bad. We're recording a little late tonight, so I'm a little. I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are too. But we'll get through this one. So UFC Newcomer Show. So what do you guys need to know to get into the UFC? If you guys are kind of newer and looking to get into it, we're gonna break that down for you today. But first, we're gonna start off as always with some news around the UFC. First and foremost, as predicted here on Fist First, Khamzat Chimaev is moving up to middleweight at 185. And guess what, Slav? That forces Kevin Holland to retire. So Chimaev ends Holland's career. What do you think about this move for Chimaev, though?
I think it's good for Chimaev. I think he's gonna have some harder competition. It's gonna be guys his size. I think he was huge at middleweight or whatever. I forget what it's called. At the 170, so he was a little too big for that. Yeah, welterweight. He was a little too big for that. I think he's gonna have guys his size now. It's gonna be a little more fair. It's gonna be a little more challenging for him. So we'll see. It's going to be fun to watch him, see if he can take these guys down as well. If it's going to be as easy, I don't know. But it's going to be a good challenge for Khamzat.
Yeah, and this is a topic we are going to circle around back to later in the show, but I think it is an exclusive for the UFC and for Chimaev.
Yeah.
Moving on along here, another piece of exciting news. An old legend, if you will, John Jones. Joe Rogan had just come out a couple days ago and said John Jones is looking giant, and I think this makes his upcoming debut to heavyweight, that much more exciting. How awesome is it going to be to see Johnny Bones Jones, come back as an absolute tank in this heavyweight division?
I'll love to see it. I hope he fights Stipe first, and then him against Ngannou or Cyril Gane. Those would be must-see fights.
Absolute fireworks.
They're going to be some great fights. So I'm excited to see it. I think the fights are going to be great. I hope he doesn't fail any PED tests or anything.
Man, I remember Nate Diaz came out and said he ain't the GOAT because he fouled so many PED tests. But nevertheless, exciting fighter to watch. And we to see him fight in heavyweight. Talk about a few shows ago, actually, we talked about the youth movement, especially the English youth movement coming along. This is not the English youth movement, but we did have a 17-year-old just UFC, Raul Rosas Jr. Shout out to him signing a UFC contract at 17. That's pretty incredible. He will be looking forward to making some noise in the bantamweight division. So that is a fighter to keep your eye on.
Yeah.
And we are on a Sunday. And, NFL just happened. And we just had an NFL star all sign with the UFC. Spent some time with the Jaguars. Didn't really get a whole lot of playing time. I think he started 9 games in his career. But, Austin Lane, player, signs with the UFC. What do you think about these two signings, Love?
So the first one, the 17-year-old, I think it's great. He's young, he's motivated, he wants to become the youngest UFC champion ever, from what he says. Mm-hmm. So I think you're going to see a lot of good fights from him. He's going to put a lot of hard work in. They're going to be some good fights. We'll see if he does what he wants. And that NFL player, this guy's good. He's got some knockout power. These NFL guys don't usually seem to do too good in UFC.
Greg Hardy.
No, but There could be some good knockouts. Him getting knocked out or him knocking out people.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Exciting
I think
nonetheless.
it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I can't wait to see Raul Rosas Jr. fight. Kid's a beast on the ground at 17 years
Yeah.
old. Dana White said you just don't see talent like that at such a young age. So
Hmm.
definitely an exciting time for this youth uprise coming on in the UFC. So UFC, you guys that are getting into it, what is the UFC? What are these fights? How do they work? So let's jump right into this. Start out with we're just going to give you guys the basics today. We don't want to over explain anything. Um, so first, foremost, fights consist 3 rounds, 5 minutes each, unless it's a championship fight or a main event. In that case, it's 5 rounds, 5 minutes each. And Slav, we do see occasionally some co-main events get that you know, uh, that 5 round bout not being the main event. So that does occasionally happen when the co-main event rounder. But I got a question for you based on this: is
Hmm.
do you prefer 3 round fights or do you prefer those championship, those main event 5 round fights?
So I actually prefer those 3 round fights. I see a lot more volume, a lot more action, a lot more chances for knockouts. The fighters are emptying the gas tank early. In those 5 round fights, you don't really see the fighters going at it till maybe the third round. That depends on the fighters, but usually the first round and the second one, it's kind of like they're testing it out, kind of playing around, and then they get into it. But yeah, those the 3 round fights, you don't have much time to test out your opponent. So usually the first round is kind of testing. Second round, they're kind of emptying the tank. If they make it to the third round, the tank's going to be emptied. Lots of times these 3 round fights end in knockout or submission. A lot of these 5 round fights tend to be a decision, I feel like. So yeah, I think it's a little more interesting with the 3 round.
Yeah, I think you bring up. When I first got in the UFC, I'm like, wow, 5 rounds of 5 minutes each. This you're going to see so much action. But you bring up a great point: is in the 3 round fights, you tend to see more action than the 5 round fights
Yeah.
because of that. Because you know, if you're in a fight, in a 3 round fight, and you're down 2 rounds to zip, that third round you have to explode. Like you have to put in that work. We're in a 5 round fight. If you're down the first 2 rounds, you got 3 more rounds to work with.
Hmm.
So I think that's a great point. 5 round fights tend now there's some exceptions, but 5 round fights do tend to be less explosive than the 3 round fights. So I think I agree with you. I think the 3 round fights are better, more entertaining, if you will, to
Yeah.
watch.
All depends on the fighters too.
Oh,
But yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
definitely the 3 rounds can be a little more exciting to watch.
So we got the rounds in. So how do you win a UFC fight? There's some obvious ways that everybody knows of, and we're gonna get them out of the way first. The first way of victory is by knockout. Literally, when you knock somebody out unconscious. Um, these are the more exciting finishes, right? Knockouts. We talked about talked about Leon Edwards' knockout. How exciting was that?
100%. Knockout.
100%. 100%. That's what all these new UFC fans expect when they come in and start watching these fights.
But
Uh,
you know what makes the knockout so good though is that it does not happen often.
it does not, yeah,
It
absolutely.
doesn't, especially with these highly skilled fighters, the champion fighters. Knockouts aren't that common. You don't. So when a guy like Usman gets knocked out the way he did, it's huge. You're gonna freak
Yeah,
out. You're gonna get excited. You don't usually see that with a champions fighter like that. So knockouts are really fun to watch when
yeah.
it's
I'm glad you brought that up too about Usman because something that UFC fans talk about when they talk about fighters is their chin. And what good chin? It means that they can withstand a lot or they can absorb a lot of hits without getting knocked out. So if you ever heard somebody be like, "Oh, man, this guy's got a great chin," that's what he means. That guy can absorb a lot of punches without getting. And like you said, Usman typically has a great chin.
Yeah.
So seeing him get knocked out was absolutely insanity.
And guys like Nate Diaz, you see
Oh,
him all bloody. I don't think he's ever been knocked out. Or
I don't
maybe,
think he's ever
yeah,
been
I don't
knocked
think
out
he
professionally.
has.
Maybe once, but I don't
So,
believe.
yeah, when you see fighters like this getting punched, all bloody, taking a beating, they're not getting knocked out, you're like, wow. But there are the times when they do get knocked out, and it's crazy because you're like, wow, this dude is unknockable. You can't
Right.
take him down. And like I think like Stephen Thompson, he wasn't knocked out until the one of his fights not too long ago. But like that was surprising. So yeah, the knockouts are definitely. I think that's what makes them so great is that they don't happen too often when these good fighters go against each other. It's rare. You shouldn't expect it. So
Right.
it's what makes it great.
So we have knockout, KO. There's also another form of knockout called a technical knockout, and there's multiple ways this can happen. The most common way of a technical knockout, also known as a TKO, is referee stoppage. Basically, somebody hits somebody, starts going ground and pound. The ref's going to stop the fight because the other fighter can't defend himself any longer. So the dude wasn't knocked out unconsciously. The ref had to stop that fight. That's classified a TKO. But there's also other forms of technical knockouts. Slav, we saw one this past Saturday,
Mm,
um, or 2 Saturdays ago. I'm sorry, in Sanhagen and Yadong. That
yeah.
doctor stoppage on Yadong, that's technically classified as a technical knockout
Hmm.
for Corey Sanhagen in that fight.
And yeah, the Brian Ortega fight too with Holloway. That was a
Right.
doctor stoppage. Yeah, I've never seen a corner stoppage though. That's the one thing I haven't seen.
Yeah, a corner stoppage. So that is classified as a technical knockout as well. It's almost like the best way I can explain a corner stoppage is Rocky Four, right? When Apollo Creed is fighting Ivan Drago, and Apollo's coaches in the corner are screaming, "Throw in the towel! Throw in the towel!" Basically, a corner stoppage is throwing in the towel. So your coaches basically forfeit the fight for you mid-fight. Very, very, very rare. It barely happens in the UFC. If it's even ever happened before, I'm not 100% positive on that. Another extremely rare TKO is tapping due to strikes. Um, Now this is when basically you get rocked and you basically tap out of the fight. Like you don't continue the fight. You can't continue the fight. This is also extremely rare. I think this actually has happened once before. Um, in my research I've done this week, I'm pretty sure I've seen that this has happened one time in the UFC before, which is pretty interesting way to get knocked out
Yeah, I
or to
haven't
win
seen
by
it.
knockout. So we just mentioned tapping out. So that brings me into the next way to win a UFC fight, and that's going to be via submission. So this is when you have your opponent in some sort of lock or some sort of choke, and your opponent literally taps out. So they'll tap either your leg, they'll tap some body part of you or themselves, indicating for the ref to stop the fight. Um, Slav, I remember our last show, you actually mentioned that you have been choked out before. And yeah, it kind of got me thinking. I'm kind of curious to hear the story behind you getting choked out.
Yeah, so just messing with one of my friends. We were kind of wrestling, pinning some choke holds, and he was like, "Yeah, if you can escape this guillotine choke, you'll get like $5 or something." So I let him pin me in the guillotine, and I could not get out.
Did you
I
tap?
was, yeah.
So
And
you
so the
lost via
funny,
submission. There you go.
yeah. So I never been in a guillotine choke or like that bad of a choke before. So I thought I would have some time to. So I took him to the ground, and what made me really mad is I was tapping on the ground, and he didn't realize I was tapping, so he kept choking me. So I got really pissed. And when he let go, I was like, on top of him, like ready to go. But like
It's that
it was
manly
all
instinct that takes over. Yeah.
Like, he didn't mean to do. We were cool afterwards. Something happened, but it's one of the worst feelings getting choked out. Yeah, I understand. After that, I understood why fighters tap out so quickly.
Yeah, submissions tend to be pretty scary. We actually showed one last week as well. That video of Maria Agapova getting choked out and pretty much unconscious after that choke. So submissions are definitely a scary way to go or to lose a fight. Um, Last but not least, I would say the most common way to win a UFC fight is probably by decision. Um, and there's a variety of ways you can win a fight by decision. You have unanimous decision. So there's three judges. If all three judges score you as the winner of the fight, you win via unanimous decision. There's split decision when two of the three judges score you as the winner of the fight. You win via split decision. And then we have a majority decision, which we also saw a couple weeks ago, which was the first time I've actually ever seen a majority decision. And that is when one judge scores the fight as a tie, but the other two judges score you as the winner. That's very interesting. It's kind of hard to understand how a fight can be scored as a tie in an odd amount of rounds, but it does happen.
Yeah,
Obviously, it can happen. But a very, I would say this winning via any kind of decision is probably the most lackluster of ways a fight can end. At least in my opinion. I don't know if you agree with that, Slav.
I agree.
So, winning by decision, it comes down to points. If you score the most points in a round, you win the round. If you win two of the rounds, you win the fight. In a three round fight, obviously you would need more rounds in a 5-round fight. But how is fighting scored? How do these judges come up with these points? So first and foremost, the biggest thing that these judges are going to look for is effective striking and effective grappling. So fighters are going to score points on how effectively that they land these punches, kicks, any kind of throw, any kind of I don't know, any kind of attack, moving forward and attacking, anything that's landing significantly, is going to score you more points. Also takedowns, and we talk about this a lot, Slav. Fighters scoring points on takedowns. So a takedown is literally when you take somebody to the ground, which leads to ground control time. So if you take somebody to the ground, you accumulate this ground control time, which means you are on top of that clinch on the ground. You are getting these control time points. And we talked about this last week, Slav, how we don't really like how these judges over exaggerate these points of this control time, because somebody can literally lay on top of you and make no advancements and score points.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, it sucks. And yeah, every judge can be different with how they view how many points is what. So, but yeah, I think most UFC judges do give a lot of points for the guy laying on top, which they shouldn't. It kind of sucks to see. But yeah, it is part of the sport. I don't know how we're gonna change that, but yeah.
Yeah. Now, that's not to discredit some of the groundwork, because there are
Yeah.
true masters on the ground, and people making advancements, people making submission attempts or throwing a
Hmm.
punch or two here and there on the ground. That's going to
Yeah,
score more points.
I always respect any fighter that's always trying to go for the submission. That's always fun to watch.
Right. You
Even
always
if they're
make
on the ground.
exactly. Always try to make an advancement wherever you are, whether you're on your
Hmm.
feet, on the ground. You're going to get points that way. Which actually brings up the next scoring system, if you will, and that's off of aggressiveness. So you are going to get awarded more points if you're the one that is pushing the pace of the fight, right? You're the one moving forward, pushing your opponent to the outside, not being passive, and you're having this aggressive intent to win the fight. I think for me, that's probably the most crucial Uh, other than significant strikes, probably the most crucial thing that can be judged, right, in aggressiveness.
Yeah, if you can't just go in there and not throw any punches and expect to win,
Exactly.
even if your opponent doesn't land anything on you, but at least they've thrown some and actually tried, then they deserve to win. So good fight example, Nama Nunez and Esparza.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah, she didn't try it. She wasn't aggressive. She didn't get much landed on her, but Esparza at least tried a little bit. So yeah,
Right.
she was more aggressive, and she's gonna get those points.
And I actually, it's funny you bring that fight up because I think Esparza got that win via decision due to this next criteria that this next thing that the judges look for, and that's control of the fighting area. So if you're the fighter that's in the center of the octagon, like I said in the aggressiveness, pushing the pace and pushing your opponent to the cage or to the outside of the octagon, you're going to score more points than your opponent because you are literally controlling the fighting area. And I think that's probably what gave Esparza the edge in that fight.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, that is what these judges look for. So basically the judges will score each round out of 10 points. Um, based on this criteria: effective striking, effective grappling, aggressiveness, control of the fighting area. Typically, the most common round score is 10-9, with one clear winner. Occasionally, you do see a 10-8 round, and that's when like the winner of the round is extremely decisive. It's extremely obvious,
very
um,
dominant.
very dominant, and occasionally, in the majority, when we talked about majority draw, occasionally you do see a 10-10 round too, which
Even
is
I did hear about 10-7 round two before.
10.
That doesn't
Yeah,
happen often, but
very, very rare. I think 10-7 round did happen once in the UFC. That's like somebody getting completely annihilated. You can get completely annihilated in the UFC and still get at least 7 or 8 points for that round. That's why it's very, very rare that you see a 10-7. You never see anything below that. Never a 10, nothing like that. Um, but yeah, that, out of 10, whoever gets the more points wins the round. The most rounds won in a fight, you win via decision if you don't get the finish. So that is how UFC judges score the fight. Something to look for when you're watching your next UFC event. Now, watching your next UFC event, you might happen to see a number next to somebody's name. So, what does that number mean? So, in the UFC, you are given a numerical rank. This goes all the way up to the hundreds, but you don't get a number next to your name until you crack the top 15 in your division. So, how do you up your rank, or how do you lose your rank? So basically, if you win your fight, you go up in rank. If you lose your fight, you tend to go down in rank. Occasionally, you don't. Like I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example at the top of my head. I can't, but maybe if you're the number 4 in your division and you fight the champ and you lose, you probably won't go down. I think actually, Yadong, Song Yadong actually went up in his rank after losing to Sandhagen.
okay.
So, yeah, it's very complex system of rankings. But
Yeah.
once you get to the top 15, you get a number next to your name.
Yeah,
Now,
if you're fighting someone close to your rank, and it's a good fight, uh, most of the time you're just probably gonna remain there. Yeah, you're not gonna go down too much. If you beat the guy that's in front of you, you'll probably just replace him.
right. Now, when you crack the top 5, that's where things get interesting for you as a UFC fighter. Because typically, when you crack the top 5, you become a true title contender. So, what that means is if you crack the top 5, you potentially have a chance to fight the champ soon, which means you become the champion of the division potentially. Um, so yeah, look, and when you see anybody 5 and below, they are your top fighters in the UFC, people to look out for. So check that out underneath on the what's that called? The HUD, the HUD screen, whatever that's called on the bottom. Um, Whenever you see a number next to somebody's name, that usually means they're a top fighter. So last but not least, what are weight classes? Because to truly understand the UFC, you have to understand the divisions, right? When you think of NFL, you think of the NFC, the AFC, but then you have the NFC East, NFC North, and so on and so forth. And it's kind of the same thing in the UFC, except you only fight people in your division. So it would be like the Eagles playing the Giants, Commanders, Cowboys every single week. But obviously, there's more than just 4 fighters in your division. So you're not going to get that repetitiveness. So we're going to start with the lowest amount of weight. This is a women's only division. Women's strawweight, 115 pounds. Slav, you mentioned Carla Esparza. She's the champion of that division. Again, that's women's strawweight, 115 pounds. What do you think about Esparza as champion? Because her next fight's coming up against Weili Chen, and I think she's going to get absolutely destroyed.
No, I agree. I don't think she's going to be a champ for long. I think this was her one time, and I think she's going to lose it and not get it back.
Yeah, I totally agree. Women's strawweight, Carla Esparza, look out for her. Moving along, flyweight division, sitting at 125-pound limit. This is a male and female division. And this division is a little bit interesting because we do have a male champ in Davison Figueiredo, but we also have a male interim champ in Brandon Moreno. And what an interim champ means is that when the champ of the division is sidelined for a prolonged period of time, and he's not accepting fights or he's unable to fight, the UFC brings in an interim champion. So he will be the temporary champion, if you will, who will eventually fight the real champion to eliminate the interim belt and only have the championship belt. So that's Davison Figueiredo as the champ, interim champ, Brandon Moreno. Female champ, UFC flyweight division, Valentina Shevchenko. She's been the champ since 2018. Slav, it's been a pretty dominant run for Shevchenko as of late.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, her last fight had a little competition. But yeah, I think she's going to continue being the champ at the flyweight division. She's pretty good.
Yeah, name to look out for, Valentina Shevchenko, absolute beast in the flyweight women's division.
What's her nickname? Bullet? Something
the
like
Bullet.
That.
Yep. Valentina the Bullet, and she does. She's actually very efficient in ballet. I'm pretty sure she studies ballet, which is pretty cool. Another male and female weight class here. We have the bantamweight division sitting at a max poundage of 135. Your male champ is Aljamain Sterling, also known as Aljo. He also has an upcoming title defense against TJ Dillashaw on October 22nd. Slav, what are you thinking about that one?
I want Dillashaw to win. I don't know if he will, just because Aljo's ground game is so good. He just might take him on the ground, hold him down there, maybe submit him. But if you watch Aljo before, this guy just keeps dudes on the ground to get points. So it's kind of tough to defend against fighters like that.
Yeah, and if you're looking, if you're new to the UFC and you're looking to watch your first title defense, that's going to be it. October 22nd, Aljamain Sterling taking on TJ Dillashaw, in the bantamweight division. The female champ of the bantamweight division is Amanda Nunes, and I don't want to touch on her quite yet because she's actually going to bring me to the featherweight division, which is a max of 145 pounds, also a male and female division. And guess who's the female champ of this division too? Amanda Nunes, a double champion. She has the belt in the bantamweight and the featherweight division. Amanda Nunes, I would probably say, is the best female fighter of all time.
I agree with you there, Steve. She's good.
And currently, another interesting featherweight champ, Alex Volkanovski. He's your male champion of that division, who's currently the pound-for-pound king of the UFC, which means out of all the divisions, he is the best fighter in the UFC. Very, very exciting fighter to watch. Alex Volkanovski, do not forget that name, especially.
I think he has a great chance of being the next double champ.
Oh, 100%. Moving up to lightweight potentially.
Yeah, I think he's got this. But he's a very skilled fighter. He can control the fight very well. Very technical fighter. He's fun to watch. He doesn't have that knockout power, but he can take. He gives these fighters a beating, man.
Yeah, he's an absolute beast. And Slav, you gave me the perfect transition into the lightweight division. Potentially Volkanovski will be moving up to the lightweight. Now this is the end for the women's division. Lightweight starts your male only divisions, and that this is sitting at 155 pounds. And Slav, the lightweight division does not have a champion right now. It's actually vacant. There is nobody holding the belt. And this is because Charles Oliveira was stripped of his championship belt a few months ago due to missing weight by a half of a pound. Might have even been less than a half of a pound. Which, again, I hate to bring it up. That Chimaev missing weight by 7.5. It just sucks. But anyway, since the belt is vacant, that means Charles Oliveira is going to be fighting for this belt again. And he's going to be taking on Islam Makhachev also on that October 22nd card. Guys, if you're getting into the UFC, do not miss this card on October 22nd. 2 title fights. Outside of that, a great card overall. And somebody else we mentioned previously in the show, Kamaru Usman. He sits in this welterweight division, sitting at 170-pound max. Kamaru Usman was the pound-for-pound king, but we have a new champion in this division who we also mentioned earlier. Leon Edwards gets the amazing head kick knockout on Kamaru Usman. So Leon Edwards is now your welterweight champion at 170 pounds. What a fight that was, Slav.
Really was crazy fight.
And
Great
the
knockout.
next division up, 185 pounds, is your middleweight division. Israel Adesanya is the champion of this, who's defending his belt on November 12th. Again, guys, that's another title defense right after that October 22nd card. You guys are not going to want to miss that one. He's going to be taking on Alex Pereira. Going to be a very interesting fight for Izzy.
Adesanya has been a very dominant champ too. He's been the champ since 2019. Yes. So there have been many fighters have tried and many have failed. So yeah, we'll see if he continues. But he's a very fun fighter to watch. I mean, it can be boring because of how I don't know. He's just so good, so dominant, and he doesn't really take risk since he's a champ. But yeah, definitely an interesting fight, and yeah, we'll see if he loses the belt.
Going to be a very, very good fight. One I'm especially looking forward to. Time to move on to the big guys. We're going to start here with the light heavyweight, sitting at a maximum poundage of 205. Your current champion for this division is Yuri Prochazka, who had just beat a UFC legend in Glover Teixeira for the belt. Most likely, we're going to see a rematch between Prochazka and Teixeira, but potentially that if you guys did not see that fight, go check that out because that I think is a contender for fight of the year actually.
Yeah, great fight. Honestly, Prochazka didn't get that submission. I don't think he would have won the fight.
I totally agree. I think that's what a lot of people. I think that's what the consensus was, right? That went to decision. Teixeira wins.
Prochazka gave everything he got, and he came out with a win. So I'd love to see a rematch with them.
100% agree. It's definitely going to be an awesome rematch. The last division here is your heavyweight division. This is a maximum poundage of 265 pounds. But I did say this on a previous show. This has the most diversity, if you will, in weights here because you tend to see fighters sit anywhere between 225 and 265 in this heavyweight division. Your current champ of this division is Francis Ngannou. But like I said a few shows ago, Ciryl Gane is going to be your new UFC heavyweight champion soon. But you also have Johnny Bones Jones coming up to heavyweight. Guys, keep your eye on this division. Got a lot. If you want to see these exciting fights, check out the heavyweight division. A lot of this is spent standing up. A lot of it is two guys just throwing hands at each other. Definitely an exciting division to watch. And we are running out of time here on Fist First. But, Slav, I want to throw you one question. Hamzat Chimaev, we mentioned, moving up to middleweight. Who do you want to see him fight? His first or his next fight in the middleweight division?
I want to see Paulo Costa, man. They got beef. I think this would be a very entertaining fight before, the pre-interviews and all that. It would be so fun to see them together, just beefing, talking smack on each other. So I want to see this fight, and I think it's going to be an interesting fight as well, too. So it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, Hamzat Chimaev potentially taking on Paulo Costa. Um, both these guys got in an altercation in a gym right before UFC 279 happened. So there is some legit beef between these guys. I think I agree with you, Slav. I think that's what we see. I think we see this beef get settled. I don't know who's going to win this fight. I would probably say Chimaev. But hey, man, like you said, he's moving up. You never know. You just never know what happens to these guys when they move up.
It's going to be harder to take down these heavier, bigger guys, Costa's huge.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah, we'll see Chimaev, his strength and his endurance, if he'll be able to.
And I know I bash him. I bashed him a few times on the show. But guys, check out Hamzat Chimaev. He is an excellent, excellent fighter. Very entertaining fighter to watch. Another name to write down. Um, yeah, so that is going to do our UFC Newcomer Show. I hope we were able to provide you guys with a little bit of extra knowledge and really help you guys become fans of what Slav and I love so much as a sport in the UFC. But that does do it for our show tonight. Check us out Wednesday. We got a fight to preview coming up this Saturday. And as always, we are streaming on DSM Media's YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, or follow button underneath you guys. And that is going to do it for us. Check us out on Wednesday.